Good day, sir. You're not. ನೀವು ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಂಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಮೇಡಮ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡಿ. ಗುಡ್ ಡೇ ಸರ್. See, this is creating a problem to me. Yes. Good day, sir. ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಿಮ್ಮದು. ಓಕೆ. ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಆರ್ ಪರಿಸರಣ, ಅತಿ ಪರಿಸರಣ. Inflation, ati parisarana, types. Okay, types of inflation. Here it is. We'll start. So there are various types of inflation. Okay, we just saw the meaning of inflation yesterday. The meaning of inflation is rise in prices. So prices are rising like this. So can anyone tell me, if there is high price, can we call that condition as inflation? Yes. If there's high price of some commodities, can we call that as inflation? That situation as inflation? We just discussed about this yesterday. One or two commodities though, high prices idre market alli, aduna inflation helboda?
ಮೇಡಮ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಇದನ್ನ?
ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆಯಾ
ಮೇಡಮ್?
ಸೈಡಲ್ಲಿ ಪಾಸ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್, ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಪ್ಷನ್. ಮೋರ್ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಮೆನ್ಯೂಗೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಓಕೆ. ಆಯ್ತು, ಇವತ್ತು ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಡಿ, ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಇಂದ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಡಿ. Okay, so inflation is just that it is rising of prices. Okay, and that too not of one or two commodities, but all the commodities as a whole. If the prices are rising consistently over a period of time, then we call that situation as inflation, right? So there are various types of inflation. I'll just give you a glance over what are those types, and then we'll discuss one by one. So on the basis of cost, you have currency inflation, you have credit inflation, you have deficit induced inflation, then you have demand pull inflation, inflation which is pulled by demand. So if your demand, this thing is very simple, we have been discussing, right? So if the demand is increasing, then naturally the prices also increases. Demand increase ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ prices ಕೂಡ increase ಆಗುತ್ತಲ್ವಾ? So the demand is pulling up the prices, and thus inflation is being caused. Then you have cost push inflation. So if the cost is increasing, then the prices will also increase. And this is how inflation occurs. Okay, then the next one is on the basis of speed or intensity. So you have under this, you have mild inflation or creeping. So what is the speed? What is the intensity of inflation? On that basis, you have classified many types of inflation. So there is a creeping or mild inflation, which is very slow. Then you have walking inflation. Then there is a hyperinflation or galloping inflation. Then the fourth one is government's reaction to inflation. What is the government's reaction? Okay, that's it under this types of inflation. And now we'll look at each one of them one by one. Okay, types of inflation. Okay, as the nature of inflation is not uniform in an economy for all the time, it is wise to distinguish between different types of inflation, right? So the nature of inflation is not uniform in an economy all the time. So we are distinguishing between different types of inflation. Why is there a need for defining different types of inflations? It is because of this reason that the nature of inflation is not uniform. Then, such analysis is useful to study the distributional and other effects of inflation as well as to recommend anti-inflationary policies. So, it also helps us in making anti-inflationary policies. Policy making ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ helpful ಇರುತ್ತೆ. Inflation types, different types ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನು distinguish ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ it helps in policy making, right? Anti-inflationary policies. Then inflation may be caused by variety of factors. So it can be a variety of factors. There are many different factors which are leading to inflation. Okay, its intensity. So this thing you will see in causes of inflation. Okay, so I will also give you a brief idea about this causes. I'll tell you all causes in brief, though it is not much required, but I'll tell you all about this. Okay, its intensity or pace may be different at different times. So the intensity we just saw, right? According to the intensity or the pace, we saw there were different types of inflations. Then it may also be classified in accordance with reactions of government towards inflation. So how is government reacting to inflation? That is also one of the basis for classification, right? Okay, so on the basis of causes, the first type on the basis of causes under this, the first one is currency inflation. So this type of inflation is caused by printing of new currency. So if you are going for printing of new currency, then this problem of inflation arises. ಹೊಸ ಕರೆನ್ಸಿನ ಪ್ರಿಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ, so there is actually a procedure which every country is supposed to follow while they are printing money. That is, they're supposed to keep some gold, with the this IMF and all. Without that, they cannot go for printing of new currency. And if you simply keep on printing new currency without actually increasing the supply of goods and services, the production of goods and services in your country, then what happens? This problem of inflation arises, and this is the reason why government is resisting from printing new currency, right? Although you must have seen this in news these days, everyone is like advising government to print new money. But why is government still not doing this? It is so easy to print new money, right? But they don't do it because it actually creates many problems like inflation and all, which is very difficult to tackle later. So printing of new currency is actually not good. Then credit inflation. So, being profit making institutions, commercial banks sanction more loans and advances to public than what the economy needs. Such credit expansion leads to rise in price level. So, what is credit inflation? Credit ಅಂದ್ರೆ loans. Banks ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕು ಅದರಿಂದ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇಕಾನಮಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕು ಅದರಿಂದ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಲೋನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಮನಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಇಕಾನಮಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ಮನಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸಸ್ more than what it is required, then again this problem of inflation arises. Too much of money supply in the economy is not good. The this should be this increase in money supply should go hand in hand with increase in the goods and services supply. That is, production should also go up, right? If both these are going together up, then that is fine. That is really good for economy. But just increasing the supply of money is actually, without increasing the production in the economy, is not good, right? That will create problem of inflation. Adi prasarana. Okay. Then third point is deficit induced inflation. Now, the budget of government reflects a deficit when expenditure exceeds revenue. Deficit and revenue, government deficit ಅಂದ್ರೆ government expenditure or income ಕಿಂತ or revenue ಕಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಡೆಫಿಸಿಟ್ ಅಂತೀವಿ, government deficit. Okay. To meet this gap, the government may ask the central bank to print additional money. Since pumping of additional money is required to meet the budget deficit, any price may be called the deficit induced inflation. So again, in deficit induced inflation, you're again going to print a new money. But here the purpose for printing new money is to fulfill this deficit, whatever you created, right? ಆ ಡೆಫಿಸಿಟ್ ಏನಿದೆ ಆ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ನ ಫುಲ್ಫಿಲ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಹೊಸ ಕರೆನ್ಸಿನ ಪ್ರಿಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ this kind of inflation is called as deficit induced inflation, right? Then the next one is demand pull inflation. So here you must remember the word itself, this type of inflation itself is giving you the meaning of it. So it is the demand which is pulling up the prices, and thus inflation arises, right? Demand ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ goods ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಬಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. But see, you can also imagine of one situation where the demand is increasing, but at the same time your production is also increasing. So at this point, you will not face this problem of inflation. You must remember this. Not all increase in demand will lead to inflation problem. If increase in demand is accompanied with increase in production and supply in the economy, then that will not lead to this problem of inflation. Okay. Okay, an increase in aggregate demand over the available output leads to a rise in price level. Such inflation is called demand pull inflation. But why does aggregate demand rise? The classical economists attribute this rise in aggregate demand to money supply. So, ಇದು ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ಮನಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಎಕಾನಮಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಕೂಡ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಮನಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ದುಡ್ಡು ಹಣ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಾವೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ವಿ ಗೋ ಆನ್ ಟು ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಗೂಡ್ಸ್, ರೈಟ್? ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ನಾವು ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಗೂಡ್ಸ್. ನಮ್ ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಮನಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಹೇಗೆ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಆಗೋದು? ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ, ಅಥವಾ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಗಿವಿಂಗ್ ಅಸ್ ಮನಿ, or either you are getting employment somewhere where they are paying you high salary, right? So this way the money supply will increase, or the banks are lending loan at very cheaper rate than what it is required, more loan, and this is how they are supplying more money in the economy than what is required. At that time the demand will increase, the aggregate demand will increase. So if the supply of money in an economy exceeds the available goods and services, see, this thing you should remember, this is the cause for inflation. If the supply of money in an economy exceeds the available goods and services, just increase in supply of money will never lead to inflation problem if it is accompanied with equally, increase in production of goods and services. But inflation will arise only when the supply of money in an economy exceeds the available goods and services. It is exceeding the goods and services. then this problem of inflation will arise. DPI appears, it has been described by Paul Bond. This is an economist name. Okay, he has said that demand pull inflation, he has described this as a situation of too much money chasing too few goods. So you have too much of money, but goods are very few. So it's too much money chasing too few goods, right? See, you can see one flow chart here. So increased in income. So if the income is increasing, then what happens? Additional demand. Your demand will go up. Then this will lead to increase in price level. Demand ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ prices ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತಲ್ಲೇ. Then this will lead to demand pull inflation. So this flow chart is important actually. You can always make use of this flow charts in your answer writing. This will fetch you more marks. Okay. Then you have Keynesians hold a different argument. They argue that there can be an autonomous increase in aggregate demand or spending. So Keynesian's view we are learning. Keynesian is another very important economist in economy. Right? This person is very important. He's given many theories in economy. So he's of view that there can be an autonomous increase in aggregate demand or spending, such a rise in consumption demand or investment or government spending or a tax cut or a net increase in exports with no increase in money supply. This would prompt upward adjustment in prices. Thus, DPI is caused, or demand pull inflation is caused by monetary factors, that is classical adjustment and not monetary factors. So there are both monetary and non-monetary factors, which is leading to, according to Keynes, there are both monetary as well as non-monetary. So this non, I'll write it here, non-monetary factors both can lead to inflation problem. So he says that there can be increase in demand, aggregate demand or spending, such as rise in consumption demand or investment. So investment go demand ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, or government spending, government spending ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ, or tax cut ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಆ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ನಾವು ಕೊಡೋ ದುಡ್ಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲೇ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ವಾ, ಸೊ ಅವಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ದುಡ್ಡು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, right? So the money in our hand will increase, right? Or net increase in exports with no increase in money supply. Here the money supply is actually not increasing, that is new printing of money is not happening, but simply whatever is available, whatever was coded ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಇಟ್ಟಿರೋ ದುಡ್ಡು ಎಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಸಡನ್ ಆಗಿ ಇಕಾನಮಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಅವಾಗ this problem will arise. So there are both monetary as well as non-monetary factors. So DPI can be explained in terms of a figure. You have a figure down here. Yeah, here is the figure. I'll explain this. So where we measure output on horizontal axis and price level on vertical axis. That is, output is on x-axis, price on y-axis. In range 1, the total spending is too short of full employment output. So range 1, this is your range 1. Okay, timer. I think for today the time is up. I just do what? Yeah, finish off this topic and then the next topic I'll take up in the next class. Yeah. So in range 1, what is happening is total spending is too short of full employment output. Here you can see range 1. So you can see this is constant. Total spending is too short of full employment. Where is your full employment? Full employment ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಈ output level ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ಈ production level ಅಲ್ಲಿ full employment in economy. So everyone is employed in economy. But below this is all full less than full employment situation, right? So YF, full employment output, that is YF, there is little or no rise in price level. So accordingly, there is no rise in price level. As demand now rises, output will rise. So if the demand is rising, then you can see from here, the demand is rising, right? Output ಗೆ demand ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅವಾಗ price ಕೂಡ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. As demand now rises, output will rise. The economy enters range 2, where output approaches towards full employment situation. Now, from range 2, we are leading to full employment situation. See, from range 2, we've reached to a position wherein we've reached full employment situation, and from here, the range 3 starts. Note that in this region, price level begins to rise. Ultimately, the economy reaches full employment situation, that is range 3, where output does not rise. So range 3 ಅಲ್ಲಿ output increase ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. You can see output is same. Alva? So output beyond a point, it is very difficult to rise output actually. It requires a lot of effort, right? Production ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ it's not so very easy. You need raw material, labor, and all. There are so many constraints. Capital ಬೇಕು ಅವೆಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಷ್ಟ ಅಲ್ವಾ. So it cannot happen so easily, right? It is not as easy as printing of new money, and that's why this problem of inflation arises always. See, you can see at this range 3, the output, it has increased till YF output, but YF ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟಾಗ್ನೆಂಟ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಇದರಿಂದ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ, ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಅವಾಗ ಈ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಅಟ್ ದ ಸೇಮ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಕೂಡ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Where output does not rise but price level is pulled upward, this is demand pull situation. The essence of this type of inflation is that too much spending chasing too few goods. So you can see price ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, demand ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗೋ because the demand is increasing, the prices are also increasing, right? At range 3, but the output has remained same, and this situation is called as inflation, right? This should be clear. Demand pull, this is demand pull inflation. You should remember this diagram. You can draw this graph in your exam under this demand pull inflation. This will really help you fetch more marks. And any doubts so far? I think we'll stop here. Cost push inflation. We'll look at this topic, cost push inflation, in our next class. So if there's any doubt, you can ask me. Yes, if there's any doubt, you can ask me. Doubt ಇದೆಯಾ? ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ ಇದು? ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಪುಲ್, ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ದೀಸ್ ಟು ಆರ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಡಿಮಾಂಡ್ ಪುಲ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಪುಷ್ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೇಷನ್. These two others are like very simple, but this is little complicated also, and very important as well. Sometimes, not here in your question paper, but sometimes in other exams, if you're writing, they ask you directly a question on demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Explain ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. So Vaga, you can draw this graph and give the explanation which is given above. This flow chart can be used. All these will help. Doubt either ಕೇಳಿ, otherwise we'll wind up. I think you must be having next class also. Okay, we'll stop here. Okay, then thank you all. We'll meet in the next class.